ladies and gentlemen. Another Halloween has come and gone. I think we had a pretty good one this year, pretty solid Halloween. And you know, if there's one time of year Jason likes the most, it's Halloween. Yeah, sure. Maybe the other one. Friday the 13th, that's what it was. Always get those two mixed up. Actually, is there one of those coming up this month? Do we have Friday the 13th in November? No, we have Friday the 12th. That's not Jason's time. That's his brother Mason that does all the killing then. All right, what about next month? No. After that? 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 Oh, no, okay. May 13th, Friday the 13th, 2022. We're going to do something special for that. Mark your calendars for that one. Okay. So, before we get into the video, one thing I wanted to mention here, I was going to mention it in the review yesterday, but I forgot. Me, Tekking101, also Barry, is on Spotify now, and we have a podcast. Not really a podcast yet. It's just audio-only versions of my videos, and I have a pretty large back catalog to upload, as you would imagine, but every video that I upload from this point onward will go up on Spotify, and you can go check that out. I have to add a link to the description as well as on my channel, but a lot of people suggested that, and for a while there, I was trying to look into how to do it, and I just didn't know how. So that was kind of awkward, because it was like, Tekking, you should make your videos into like audio on podcasts, because a lot of people listen to my videos when they're in the car or something, or jogging, or whatever people do. And I'm like, sure, I'll get on that, and I tried to research it. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So thanks to Rustage and Briggs, because they gave me a website called Spreaker, and they was like, yeah, just use this website. And I'm like, oh, thank you, because I had no idea. I'm just stupid. I'm sorry. Yeah, last chapter 1030. Lot of stuff happened, or as I think people would say, a lot of stuff did not happen, as in character deaths and stuff. But we're not here to talk about that today. No, we're going to talk about the end of the chapter, which had a pretty shocking revelation there. I think, honestly, to me, more shocking than just like even Kinemon still being alive, or Kanjuro still being alive, or Orochi still being alive. No, it was the revelation that, yeah, Kid and Law have awakened their respective devil fruits. Kid's Jiki no Mi, the magnet fruit, and Law's Op fruit, the the surgery operation devil fruit. And I was just like, oh, okay, so we're just going with that, all right? Now, obviously, Oda has laid the way for awakenings for a while now. I mean, even before the time skip, it was mentioned that awakened devil fruits exist in the form of the demon guards, and that was just mentioned like offhandedly by Crocodile. It wasn't really expanded on in any major way after that. He was just like, oh yeah, they're awakened zone devil fruit users, and no more context after that. It was never mentioned during Marineford or anything. Back then, I think there was even a popular theory that you could only be awakened if you were a zone, because it wasn't really, clarified one way or the other. But then, of course, we meet Doflamingo during Dressrosa, and he reveals that, like, yes, sometimes devil fruit powers are awakened, and allow me to show you my powers, the awakened Ito no Mi, so he can turn the surrounding area of Dressrosa and the surrounding, like, houses and stuff into string. And then Luffy fights against Katakuri at Totland, who was also revealed to be awakened. So many theories have been abound on exactly how do you awaken a devil fruit, what are the prerequisites for it, and all that kind of stuff. Is Luffy going to awaken his devil fruit, or some other characters going to awaken the devil fruits? And yeah, without really still yet to explain exactly how it's done, Oda just revealed, like, oh yeah, Kid and Law have awakened their devil fruits, and not even just like awakened it in the battle with Big Mom. It's like revealed they had it awakened for a while, at least before this, to the point where they've already had like techniques. Now with devil fruits, it's a little strange, because when you eat your devil fruit, you instantly know, like telepathically, like what the name of that devil fruit is and what the basic abilities are, but you don't learn everything, and like the name of the attacks you can kind of choose on your own, obviously. Like, Luffy could name his techniques whatever he wants. They don't have to be named after like guns or firearms or whatever, but he knows instantly upon eating the fruit, like, this is the Gamu Gamu no Mi, it gives me the ability to turn into rubber. But stuff like, gear second, third, fourth, like advanced techniques, that's up to the user. So when Law uses his awakening, he has an attack, or kind of like a setup for the attack, an advanced form of the room, which is K-room, or I think the way it's pronounced is Kuromu, or, chrome in Japanese. Like, that's actually the translation, okay? So I guess Law has just awakened the powers of Chrome from Dr. Stone. I'm like, all right, I'm more of a Senku guy myself, but Chrome is pretty cool. We can go with Chrome. I don't know if that's going to have any sort of, like, meaning or like importance, the fact that it sort of sounds like Chrome, or like that might actually be what like Oda's going for. I mean, Chrome doctor, surgery, hospital. I mean, I guess there's like surgical tools and like stuff in hospitals that could be really shiny and made out of chrome. It's like in the future, everything will be chrome, as we all know. But I don't know if that's like what Oda's going for or if that was just the translation. But the way Law said it in the chapter and the katakana and everything was indicative of chrome, all right? I still want to call it K-room because that sounds like just like the upgraded form of room. It would be weird to say, oh yeah, he uses room, but then he uses chrome. And it's just like, room, K-room, whatever. Anyway, he named the technique that. And then in addition to that, he has another technique with K-Room where he coats his Kikoku with it, his sword, and he called the technique Anesthesia, and that was the technique he used on Big Mom. And likewise, Kid has an awakened ability called Assign, which he turns Big Mom into a giant electromagnet, essentially. Also a technique that he named. He's like, Assign. So it implies they've had these awakened abilities at least for a little while. At least I would assume, like, before Wano, they had these powers. Maybe Law had it even before that. Maybe they awakened them like during the time skip and they've had access to these abilities for several months, enough to like get a handle on exactly how they work. Now they mention they drain a tremendous amount of stamina, but they still know the process of how it works. Like Kid knows that, all right, I have a technique that's an awakened technique that if I can use it, it's called Assign, and it turns somebody or something into a giant electromagnet and attracts everything towards them, all right? So Kid knew the function of this ability. It's just that, yeah, it takes a lot of stamina, so I don't use it very often. So they might have very well awakened these powers a year ago or whatever, okay? And it's just their last-ditch effort that they don't like to use unless their backs are up against a wall. As Law stated, it's like a one-and-done sort of situation where if I use my awakening, if I use K-Room or Kuromu or whatever, and it doesn't work, I'm going to be zapped, and I'm not going to be able to, fight after that. And then, so especially against Big Mom, I can understand why they were hesitant to use their awakened abilities. Also, maybe an idea that maybe, because Kid and Law sort of have a little bit of a rivalry, maybe like they don't want to like instantly lead with their strongest techniques, to reveal that to the other person or whatever. So I mean, like, there's two ways to look at it, honestly. Like, you could look at it like, all right, we're going up against one of the Yonko, we're going up against Big Mom, let's just start off with our strongest moves, and if they work, great, we can just finish her off in one attack. But if they don't, then you're tapped out and you can't fight anymore after that, of course. Or the other way of looking at it is like, all right, let's fight her for a little while and then let's use our awakenings, but then we're really dead if it doesn't work, you know what I mean? So I guess at least try to wear her down a little bit first with like normal techniques. Law is using counter shock, Kid's using his giant metal arms to like punch her a bunch of times, but it really comes down to just using the awakenings. And it's actually kind of cool because Kid was the one, not Law, which was very interesting to me. Kid was the one that said to Law, like, hey, Trafalgar, have you awakened your devil fruit too? So that's kind of interesting that Kid was the one that brought it up, sort of being like, all right, we're not the best of friends and we're not really like in an alliance or anything, but we're going up against Big Mom here. If you have the same ability as I do, it drains stamina a lot, but if we work together and we use it at the same time in conjunction, we might actually be able to take her down, all right? But let's revisit awakening and how you awaken really quick. So I had a theory for a long time that in order to awaken a devil fruit, you basically just have to have it for a very long time or like a set amount of years, and then you can awaken it, or you have the potential to awaken it. I guess it's possible somebody could have a devil fruit for like 30, 40, 50 years and never awaken it at usage. Obviously like pirates like Luffy, Kid, and Law, they're using their devil fruits multiple times, like in every single battle, really stretching it to the limit. It might actually be like a situation in My Hero Academia with quirks, where quirks are like just like, muscles in your body. The more you use them and the more you strain them, the stronger they get, okay? Just kind of like working out, kind of pushing to your limit and then stopping and then pushing to your limit again, that kind of situation. So with all the times Luffy's used his fruit, especially going into all these really dangerous techniques like Gear Second, that was like shortening his lifespan, and then Gear Fourth, which was also kind of detrimental to him, he's really straining the Gamu Gamu no Mi to its uppermost limits. So I would imagine, if Kid and Law have already awakened their devil fruits, maybe through that similar concept, just by using their devil fruits a lot and training with them a lot and really just pushing the upper limits of what they can do, Luffy should have very well awakened his devil fruit already, or he's right on the cusp of doing so, right? Maybe he's a little bit behind behind the others. Law got his power when he was 13 years old, and he's 26 right now, so he's had it for 13 years, basically half of his life. Kid is 23 right now. We do not know when he got the Jiki no Mi. Oda did draw him as a little kid, and he just draws him with like a wrench or whatever, so maybe he grew up in like a scrap heap or something, or he was always like tinkering with stuff. So, and that's the regard. Maybe he did get his devil fruit when he was younger, who knows. But I will say this about Kid and Law, very interesting, okay? So Law is obviously he was raised by his dad and his mother, who were both doctors, okay? And so even before he got the Appi no Mi, he knew a little bit about, like, you know, surgery. And actually his dad mentioned that he was kind of like a prodigy in that field. You know, he was kind of like Doogie Howser, okay? And it was also mentioned, I believe, by Corazon, that the true power of the Op fruit can only be utilized by somebody that knows the human body, someone that is a doctor or is a surgeon, all right? I had an idea today when I was planning this video. You know, when Law ate the Op fruit, you know, he couldn't do stuff right away. Like, he was trying to heal Corazon and he couldn't do that right away. So what if the only technique that you really get when you first eat the Op fruit is the room technique, to open up your operating room, okay? But everything else, all the other techniques that Law utilizes, like radio knife, gamma knife, counter shock, the curtain ability, the scan ability, shambles, tact, all those other abilities that he utilizes, you can really only learn those if you know stuff about being a doctor, because the Op fruit embodies that, like the concept of surgery and being on an operating table and stuff. And so room is like the base technique, but all those other moves, you have to know a little bit about the human body in order to utilize them properly. Like, you have to have an understanding of radio knife surgery in order to use and learn radio knife. But in that regard, and this is probably one of the reasons why the Op fruit is regarded as the strongest devil fruits, the abilities and the techniques might as well be limitless in that regard, especially to somebody like Law that's a genius in the field, okay? Because, you know, all those weird little abilities he had, like he had the personality swap surgery he used against, you know, on the Straw Hats during Punk Hazard, that might just be his own creation, right? And he's like, because he understands maybe how the human mind is wired or whatever, and it's just like through that understanding and through the Op fruit, he was able to create his whole new surgery, the personality swap surgery, all right? Maybe the doctor that had it before Law, you know, he's the one that developed the Eternal Youth operation, all right? So maybe Law, like, he has the potential to unlock that, but he doesn't have it right away. It's not just given to you by the devil fruit. It's the same reason why you can't just eat the Gamu no Mi and instantly use Gear 4th or Gear 3rd, or you instantly learn or know how to use those techniques, right? Those are something that Luffy created on his own, all right? So what I'm trying to get across here is that Law was the perfect person to eat the Op fruit, okay? He was a genius doctor. Even at that young age, he understood that kind of stuff, and it got even better, you know, when he grew up into an adult and he had the Op fruit and he was developing all these different surgeries with his devil fruit, okay? So his affinity for his devil fruit was very, very high. Now, look at Eustace Kid, which, like I said, we don't really know much about his past, but let's say he did grow up with an interest in, like, engineering and mechanics and that kind of stuff, and so he knew how, you know, like, to put things together or dismantle them or put them apart, like different kinds of wiring and stuff. Maybe he grew up in his dad's, like, well, they don't have really cars in One Piece, but, like, you know, some kind of workshop or, like, a garage or something like that. Maybe he really did grow up in a place like Spider Miles, which, you know, Eustace is from the South Blue, but maybe there was like some giant scrap heap or scrap yard in the South Blue, and his dad or his uncle or his grandpa or something was like an engineer, and Kid would learn about this kind of stuff, and, you know, how to change oil and stuff, you know, that kind of stuff at a young age. And when he did eat the Jiki no Mi, the devil fruit that affects magnetic fields, but not just magnetic fields, but taking metal and shaping it together to actually make, like, robotic arms. Like, Kid literally has a robotic prosthetic, okay? And it functions, too. It's not just like Kid, you know, took a bunch of metal, used his devil fruit to paste it together in the shape of an arm, and then just attached it to him, and he's just... No, it's a fully functional metal prosthetic, which I like to think that Kid might have very well just made himself. Kid might be the shipwright of the crew, right, of the kid pirates. Like, he just might, like, be like Frankie. Maybe not as advanced as Frankie, because, like, Frankie's, like, way more in kind of, like, robotics and cyborgs and stuff. But, you know, Kid knows his shit. He knows his stuff with, like, making robotics and stuff like that. Like, making a robotic arm and a prosthetic. Yeah, the Jiki no Mi definitely helps to keep it all together. But when he makes stuff, it's like, yeah, it kind of gives the impression that he's just cobbling metal together with no real rhyme or reason. But, you know, when he makes, like, the Punk Rotten, like that giant mechanical robot demon, or his arms or whatever, there's definitely a thought process and, like, an engineering mind going into it. And also, like, when he used that technique to, like, crush Big Mom, or I believe it was Big Mom or Kaido, one of the two, and I think it was Kaido, actually. He was like, you know, oh, this is like a garbage compactor, I'm just gonna, like, compact you with this attack, you know, or whatever. So, you know, that might be his backstory there. So if that's the case, you could say Kid also has an affinity for the Jiki no Mi. He's like one of the best people to get his hands on that fruit, all right? So maybe it really has less to do with the amount of time that you have with your devil fruit. That's probably a factor. I don't think you can awaken a devil fruit within like 6 months or a couple of years of eating it. You probably have to have it for a little longer than that. But it's more to do with your affinity and how much it works for you and how much you learn about the concept that your devil fruit embodies. Because a lot of devil fruits, like Law's, Suru's, Wash fruit, they don't really just like summon elements or whatever. They embody concepts. Okay, so Law's concept is surgery, Kid's is magnetism, Osuru's is laundry. That's just how it works. Now, when it comes to Luffy, on the other hand, Luffy's not really so much of a concept. I mean, it is. It's the concept of rubber, but it's not as complicated as, you know, the Jiki no Mi or the Op fruit. You know, Luffy's is just turning his body into rubber, all right? And you could maybe argue he had sort of an affinity for it, but it was more of just like, you know, oh, well, you can beat me down, but I'll never stay down. I'll always get back up, just like rubber, okay? And so Luffy's used that phrase before in the story a little bit. Luffy has definitely learned how to use his devil fruit very well, to the point where now in the story at age 19, he's very, you know, has a high affinity for it and everything. I'm just saying that when Law and Kid had eaten their respective devil fruits, they might have just had a better affinity for it beforehand. You know, like Luffy, when he first ate the fruit, he didn't really know what he was doing. It took him a long time. It took him about 10 years of training to get to the point where he was leaving Dawn Island and he had a Gumu Gumu no pistol and that can actually take out a Sea King. I just feel like Law would have reached the point where he could use room and shambles and tact and mess and all those really cool surgery techniques maybe within a couple of years of eating the fruit. He didn't know what he was doing when he first ate it, but also keep in mind he was kind of distraught with like Corazon dying right in front of him, so he was like, op fruit, cure him. Actually, in the Law light novel series, which that's a thing I need to talk about at some point. I have not read them other than just like the summaries on the wiki or whatever, but it was revealed that shortly after Law had left Corazon, after he died and the Doflamingo killed him, he was wandering around Swallow Island, Law went into a and it was in the cave, like shortly thereafter eating the op fruit, he was able to remove the amber lead and then he passed out. So he was able to like remove the amber lead from his body, so he learned a little bit about it. So already just, you know, having that doctor knowledge helped him out. Now, of course, it's a light novel, it's not canon, but, you know, I can believe that. I can believe, like, a couple of days or so after he eats the fruit, after he calms down a bit, he's like, okay, just remember what your dad taught you, okay? You have this ability, the op fruit, and it's just like, I just wish I had like an operating room. Okay. Alright, so I have to remove the amber lead from my body, and it's attracted to, like, I don't know, the amber lead probably settles it, like, maybe in your muscles or something, so he's like, okay, now I really wish I could just peel back my skin and see my muscles, and okay, that worked, and then he just literally did that, and he's like, alright, now I'm just gonna, oh, okay, cool. Like, you know, I can understand Law doing that. I can also see Kid doing that kind of stuff with, like, mechanics at even a young age, okay? So I think Luffy just, like, maybe a little bit further behind them in that regard, okay? But at this point in the story, it might as well break even because, you know, Law had his for 13 years and Luffy's only had his for 12. It's like a year difference. Like, it doesn't really matter, okay? And so Luffy has definitely pushed his devil fruit way more, so I'm thinking at this point in the story, Luffy is going to reveal his awakening. He's going to probably awaken the power during his fight with Kaido. He's not going to have any idea what it is at first. It might just be like the final attack that he uses maybe by accident. Like he's just really feeling like, okay, this is the final attack to take down Kaido, to free Wano, to get rid of, Kaido and Orochi forever, to save Momonosuke and all the people and all the scabbards. This is the final attack. And then boom, Luffy awakens. He awakens. His arm, or well, I guess it wouldn't be his arm, I guess it would be the surrounding area changes into rubber. Like maybe he is in the air and he punches Kaido really hard and Kaido's falling down and Kaido's like, oh well, when I hit the ground I'll launch a Boro breath or something, and then Luffy's just really intense, and then the ground below Kaido, boom, turns into like a giant trampoline, like a bounce house or something, and then Kaido's like, what the hell, boing, and then bounces right back toward Luffy, and he's like, King Kong gun, boom, and then right in the air, so he's getting bounced back, so increasing his inertia there, and then boom, punched back at the same time, and that's the attack that finally finishes him off or something. Luffy has no idea what he just did. He doesn't have a name for it yet. He just knows that it just massively drained his stamina, and he won't be able to fight after that, but he takes out Kaido in the process. And then maybe in the latter part of the story, when we're getting into the final saga here with Elbaf and then Lodestar and a Laugh Tale eventually, Luffy learns a little bit more about this technique. I thought maybe Katakuri could show up and teach him a little bit about the awakening, because their devil fruits are so similar, which I guess that could still happen, right? But since Kid and Law have already awakened their fruits and they're already in Wano, and if Luffy awakens his, I mean, they're still enemies, but they might they're not enemies, but they're rivals, so they might want to not tell Luffy everything about it. And of course, every devil fruit is different, so they're not going to be able to it's oh, this is exactly how your awakening works. But they might at least be able to tell Luffy oh, you awakened your fruit. Just be really careful when you use those techniques, because they drain your stamina a lot. Also, that speaks volumes now about Doflamingo and Katakuri, because Doflamingo, he didn't use his awakening power until the last part of that fight, to kind of give the idea Doflamingo was also using it as a last-ditch thing that he really doesn't want to do. But he was able to use a lot of attacks, like the 16 holy bullets and the off-white and everything, the flap thread and all that stuff. That drains a lot of stamina. Katakuri used his awakening way earlier on in the fight. Of course, Katakuri and Luffy's fight took place over 12 hours. But he had so many awakened techniques. He had the flowing river mochi. He had those giant arms, the donuts. Then he had the peerless donuts, the buzz cut mochi. He had so many awakened mochi no mi techniques. So Katakuri just speaks crazy amount of stamina that guy had, right? So that might also be part of the training. It might be sort of like in Bleach, where you can awaken your Bankai, but it's stated that it takes an additional 10 years to train with the Bankai and learn all the different things you can do with it. And it takes a lot of stamina, a lot of Ryatsu, so you got to balance that and train with it, right? Might be something like that. Okay, so let's take Katakuri here. Katakuri's 48 years old right now. I think he ate his devil fruit when he was 5, or it was shown that he had the mochi no mi when he was 5. Okay, so that's 43 years he had the fruit. He might have awakened it maybe at the same age Law and Kid are right now, in his mid-20s, but he wasn't able to do that much with it because it drained his stamina so much. So for the next 20-something years, Katakuri did nothing but train every single day using awakening techniques, learning how to build up more stamina to the point where he was able to fight against Luffy. And once again, when you get the idea that, literally that fight did last half of a day straight, not straight, there were little breaks in between, but effectively 12 hours. Yeah, Katakuri trained a lot with that, and Doflamingo had to as well, okay? So, yeah, it's not exactly completely dependent on the amount of time you have it. It's not like you have to have your devil fruit for 30 years, which I erroneously assumed might have been the case at the beginning, but, you have to probably have it for a decent number, maybe 5 or 10 before you can awaken, and then even after you awaken, there's still so much more training you have to do. I think there definitely is a reason that whenever we do see awakened devil fruits that are used very effectively, like Doflamingo and Katakuri, those characters are already at least in their 40s, okay, and they've had their devil fruits since childhood, okay? It would be different, if, well, no, Buggy's not a great example because well, he is in his 40s, but Buggy, well, he's 39, but Buggy is also, doesn't really train with his devil fruit all that much. I think it would be different is, let's say, like Bartolomeo. Like Bartolomeo is like in his early 20s, and if he used like the barrier fruit, but he had all these awakening techniques and he was able to use it like the same way Doflamingo or Katakuri were able to use his fruits, I don't think that would have made a lot of sense because like he hadn't had the fruit for that long, and even if he could awaken it, like Bartolomeo might awaken the barrier fruit, but even if he does, then it would still drain him a lot. So, to get to the point where you can actually use it very well, you have to be very old, in your 40s, of course, because that's very old, or you have to be maybe part of the main cast, because I feel like Luffy, if he does awaken during this arc, he's going to train with it, and he's probably going to be better at using the awakening than Kid and Law and maybe even Katakuri and Doflamingo are, because he's like the main character and stuff. So by the final battle we see Luffy in this story, he might be able to whip out like awakening techniques, and it's not that big of a deal in terms of the stamina. He just might have like a lot at that point. So yeah, that's the situation there. But hey, we got a lot of opportunities here coming up. Given the way that they explained it, they're not going to keep this awakening thing up for very long. Not to say that they'll be passed out immediately at the start of next chapter, but they might be severely winded. I mentioned in the review, I want to see how long the assign ability works for Kid, to actually turn Big Mom into the giant jumbo magnet, emphasis on jumbo, how long that's going to last. Some people have said, like, magnetic forces can last, in some cases, years. Yeah, that would be pretty damn broken, but like I said, even if it doesn't last years, even if it only lasts, like, a few hours, Big Mom is effectively taken out of this fight. Not only that, but like everywhere she goes in Onigashima now, she's like walking around. It's just like a pile of metal that's covering her, and she's just stomping around Onigashima. And as she's moving through the entire castle, more rebar and steel support beams are going to be ripped out of the walls, and like the castle's just going to start to collapse on top of her. Now, Big Mom is super tough, so Big Mom, it's kind of funny to picture Big Mom as just like this giant pile of metal, and it's just stomping through Onigashima, because it's not really hurting her, and she can lift a lot, but it's just going to cause like the entire building to collapse eventually, right? And so that might happen. Also, there was the internal damage that Law used on her with his K-Room, his Chrome, and Anesthesia, which seemed to like spatially warp the sword, so when he stabbed Big Mom in the back of the neck, it like the blade came out the front, but like it doesn't actually hurt her in that way. It's like the inside of her, like that's actually touching the K-Room. That was the thing that was actually damaging her, like from the inside out. And he probably just used, it was like the shock of will, but it was probably something very similar to counter shock, just from the inside out. And that was the thing I mentioned that's very interesting about the awakened op fruit, where most devil fruits affect the world around them. So, most devil fruits only kind of affect the users, but then the awakening affects everything else, and like buildings and stuff. But Law's is sort of the opposite in that regard, where his normal devil fruit power is just like on the macro scale, being able to affect things in large range and like the rooms and stuff. He was able to make a room like the size of a mountain when he fought Doflamingo and Treble, but his awakening is very much on the micro scale on things inside. So that kind of shows me that there's not set in stone rules when it comes to awakenings. Every awakening might be a little different. Even the rule of, like, it affecting other things around you might not be ironclad. Like, that's the way Doflamingo explained it, and with Katakuri and with Kid, it makes sense. But Law is an exception. Now, the op fruit is a very, very weird fruit, so it might just very well be the lone exception to that rule, but you just never know. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be making a few about this chapter because a lot of crazy stuff happened. I want to make a video about the numbers at some point, so that'll be coming out. Oh, let me know. I think I'm done with Capybara facts, and the only reason I know, right, I'm sad too. But, the thing is, and I realized this, when I did ant facts and I did bat facts, those were like, I picked like the genus of the species, and so there's a lot of different species of ants out there to discuss that are all very different. There's a lot of different species of bats. But with capybaras, I kind of picked just one species, like this capybara. So there was like a limited amount of facts in the pool. They're very fascinating creatures, though, but I'm just like, there's not as many as like bats or ants. So I guess we're now going to move on to the D. Wait, hold on a second. I have this. This is the... Oh, wait, where? Oh, there it is, there it is. We have the D. All right, so Yeah, hold on a second while Tekken Go fetches his D. Okay, so there we go. We need animal facts for the letter D. So give me your suggestions down below. And preferably, like, I'm not saying we're going to do dog facts, although I would love to do dog facts. I might just do dog facts. But in that case, there's so many different breeds of dog, and, you know, not even just the breeds of, like, domesticated dogs, but also we could talk about wolves and, like, coyotes and foxes and stuff. You know, so, like, canines, but doggos. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Let me know down below on your ideas for D. Okay. See you, everybody. Tekking, signing out.